Hi, welcome back. Joining me for some woodworking on the lathe. Last video we were taking a piece of tree trunk like this and got rid of all the cracks that usually are found in these logs of firewood, and we basically ended up with a piece in the middle that had no cracks at all. So I mounted it back, and I already have an idea of what I'm going to do with this piece of wood. I'm going to make a round box out of it. So before I can get started on this, I want to lay out my plan on how to create this, right? So this is going to be the bottom of my box, and the lid is going to come from the top of here. I want to have like a reasonable sized lid, so about this much. So I'm going to start putting in an indentation right here. So that is my plan. Once I have that indentation done, because I need to have like a rim to fit into the box, I'm going to separate the lid from the box itself. But before I do that, I want to make life easier on myself when I have to reverse the piece to work further on the lid and the box itself. Now I mounted the piece, it's like pretty good centered, but there is like quite a large piece here that I want to get rid of, and I want to be able to reverse it, that the flip that it will fit in the chuck here. Now these chucks are slightly tapered on the inside. So what I want to do is like have a piece sticking out that is slightly tapered. So I'm going to start doing that first, and that will just make life easier for me as I progress through the piece. So let's get to it. So I'm going to take the cut tool. Now you're probably going to hear this squeaky noise. The cutting tool goes in, and it's just the friction of the wood going by the blade. So what I do is I just cut a little bit off to the side to give the blade some room. Now, as I'm cutting, I'm feeling by the vibration in the tool and in the machine that the piece is just a little bit off center. Right, that's going to cause vibrations. Now, if you don't go too deep into the wood, you can kind of work around it because you're actually turning it round center as you're working away. But the more you get into the middle, the more that vibration is going to mess with you. So I'm just going to quickly go over this surface and smoothen it out. Then we'll have less vibration. It's just little adjustments that you do along the way while you're working. Maybe I should have done that from the start, but while you're working on it and you feel the machine or the wood doing certain things, wonder why they're doing it. And in this case I was feeling the vibration. So that tells me that the center mass is not a little bit off here. So I'm going to correct that. I'm going to use this tool here to give it a quick scrape. Okay, check, check, check. You probably noticed while I was cutting the side that you hear a little stutter, and you can actually feel it in the tool if you're off center. And the whole trick is just like gently to draw the blade across. Now some people prefer to push the blade across. I prefer to draw the blade across because it gives me a little bit more control. It's really a personal thing. But the most important thing is you make a couple of passes with your tool, and it's when you start feeling that, you know, your tool is cutting into the wood and it's cutting smoothly and no juttering. So now I have like a perfectly centered, and that will become apparent if I'm going to switch on to higher rotations. I'm going to have less vibration in the piece itself. It's actually, it's the best of practice to do that immediately when you start, but sometimes you just forget, and while you're working your way you might find, you know, it's shuddering. It means you're off balance. So it's better just to stop what you're doing and correct that issue. So we're going to go back to the cutting, which probably, being like everything being centered back again, is going to make it a little bit easier to get really close to the core. Again, check. And I'm just going to adjust my tool rest a little bit, because I actually want it as close to the work as possible. The closer you get your tool rest to the work, the more control you're able to put on it. Because the longer your tool goes from the rest, it's basically, it's lever force, and the closer this force is, the more control you have over your tool. Again, we're going to be using the cutting tool. Quick check that nothing hits the tool rest. There we go. Now I immediately noticed that difference, and it was going, the cutting was going better. But before I separate this, I want to prepare this ridge to be fitting into the chuck when we turn it around. So I'm going to smooth this one out and make it slightly tapered, so it will fit snugly into the chuck here. Just going to use the wide blades to make sure everything is nicely tapered. And it's good that I paid some attention to where I'm going to remount, because again you heard that shuddering, which meant it was actually already off center there. So, but we got it nicely rounded off. So now I'm going to continue and cut this piece off to the very end. Just checking my tool, just making sure it's nice and sharp. Okay.
Now the closer I get to separating the piece, the slower I work. The last thing I want is like to create sudden unbalance in the turning piece. It goes flying everywhere out center. So I'll probably cut it to a wee little bit and separate it by hand using a sharp chisel. So I'm almost there. Turning to the lowest speed possible.
Right, I'm about ready to get rid of the excess here. So just put the machine in neutral. I'm going to retract this, give myself some room here. What I do is just take the mallet, give it a tap around it. And off it comes. So now I'm going to turn the piece around. I've got a freshly tapered end there, so
you can immediately see that the tool is much sharper. We just have to make sure that we create enough room for the blade to travel through. That's another thing that I noticed. If you don't, the friction might cause the wood to overheat and get these black burn marks. I had them on my first couple of projects I did, and basically had to figure it out, like to give it some room for the tool to go through. And also keeping the low speed.
now as I get in, because this is going to be the bottom of my box, one mistake I made earlier is that, and that was with a small chalice I made, is you tend to round off, right? So if you put the box down, it's going to be all wobbly. So before you actually cut it, you want to make sure that your base is actually slightly hollow, straight or slightly hollow. So I'm always going for slightly hollow, making sure that, you know, we have
if it sits on a table or a flat surface, that it doesn't roll around. So I'm going to give that some love as well. You notice that I'm pretty much there to the cut there for the bottom, but what I also want to do is to get the lid off at the same time. So what I will try to do is get that first cut of the lid in and separate the lid as we go. It will save me a good bit of time if I actually do that immediately before finally separating this piece, but at least I know what my dimensions are, and I know how to actually, you know, determine where the lid begins, where the box begins, and where to make my cut for the lid itself, for the inner rim. So I'm just going to adjust my tool here. And as you see, I just do bits at a time and stop and think what I'm doing. If you've done this for years, you know, you just take a tool and you just work away as you have done it for 100 times, but I haven't. So, you know, this kind of like discovery on how to do things, I think sharing this with anybody who's starting to use a lathe as well might be beneficial. I'm sure that if there are some people out there who's been working wood lathes for many years, they just look at me and go like, "Ah, you fucking idiot." But I don't have the luxury of a teacher, so I have to teach myself. So, alright, so now I want to make the cuts for the lid, where I want the lid to be. So I'm thinking about, and I'm just going to make my life easier by just using this marker here. I want to make my lid about this big, right, and it needs a little lip to go in, so it goes to there. That means my final cut to separate the lid should go here. So what I'll do is just keep the marker in place. I'll just make an indentation. I'll just switch the machine on, just making sure nothing catches. I'll switch the machine on, do a little mark. There we go. Switch it off again. And create my second mark around here, so I switch the machine on. Make my second mark. There we go. Get my third mark, which is here. Switch the machine on. So now I see exactly where my tool needs to go for each stage that I'm making cuts. So first I'm going to mark off the lid, and the depth of that first cut is also going to determine the thickness of the sides of the box, because that's where the lid rim actually is going to fall in later.
Right, so that's the thickness of my lid, and now we see the amount of the rim going into the box. I've got a pretty much idea like okay my box is going to be